Good morning. And happy birthday to myself. No, it's fine. It's totally fine, totally fine. It's okay, you forgot. No, it's just messing around. Right, a little bit of narcissism there as well. It's all good, it's all good. So I wanted to talk about a whole load of stuff. It just sort of come to me this morning like, this is fucking great. Yeah, that's literally what I thought. So the first thing is sort of unusual weather patterns and stuff going on Earth. Now, a lot of it's, and we've got about global warming, well, chemically the planet's changing anyway, and the reality is there's less forests, so therefore that has an impact on things. There's always stuff about carbon, the demon carbon, and why don't we just modify ourselves in some way or something ridiculous? The reality is just need to put more plants into it. You need to incorporate plants into human design. There's loads of building tops and there's loads of buildings and there's loads of people who don't have a single plant in their place. I don't know what the yield of a plant of oxygen, but you're probably at least putting it back. And also the solar energy coming down, it's then getting absorbed by the plant, it's absorbing the carbon, and then it's resulting in producing more oxygen for you, which is great in the daytime. At night time it's the reverse. But it also depends on the type of plant. Every plant does different things. You know, there might be some plants that actually produce more carbon dioxide than produce oxygen throughout the day. I see a police car. Yeah, I think yesterday must have been visited by something. Because I seem to have a lot more knowledge. I saw something very strange. I went to my bathroom and I saw something in my mirror and it was a bit freaky. Police. There's big stuff going on, big stuff. So I saw this outline. So basically I took a selfie and there was already a dark shadow behind me. And because I was just doing something completely different. And I went to the bathroom and I took a picture of my phone, and there was something dark behind me, and I looked at the picture in the phone, and it started to form a kind of like a bit of a face, like an outline to the face. It wasn't my face reflected or something. I don't really know. It's only one of these things you see for like a few seconds. But I tell you what I had is this electrical sensation of dread that came over me. So it was enough for me, my body, to see it as something real, because it wasn't just like I had a fantasy, because you're not really going to have any sense of fear, or whatever that was. It probably was fear. I don't feel fear like that normally. You know, it's kind of, I'm alone and there's something manifesting in front of me that, you know, it looks like it could go straight towards me, and so it's that kind of, I've got a tiger in my room sort of thing. But anyway, so I had that sensation. I don't think it's there to harm me. If it is something, I mean, it could be just, like I say, an ocular illusion. I've just visually seen something. Anyway, so we get on to the juicy stuff. So, as I mentioned, the weather patterns are influenced by some human behaviour, but mainly by the sun as well. And some of these other disruptive forces where we've had earthquakes and other things that have been going on. There's some freak weather patterns. There's basically, I was looking at some information on some asteroids that's going around. So the asteroid is influencing the quantum field. So the planets very much are in a sea. So when we say a sea of space or something like that, it's seen as like a spaceship that you're travelling in this sea. They're probably right. At a quantum level it is, and it can be disrupted. So, you know, that asteroid is a pebble in the pool. It's causing ripples, and then ripples are causing earthquakes. But it doesn't have to be that close to the planet. It's disrupting our kind of hub, which is our sun. But it also could be cutting through the lines by which there's like rail tracks that we travel on. So the current which operate as these solar rings that we travel around. So it also means if something jumped and got caught into that ring, it would follow it around as well. So there could be some stuff behind Earth that's being dragged along, and the impact of that, and also the understanding that if gravity is a water, is a substance in that essence. I'm just kind of using it as a model to explain gravity, or the field of space anyway, dynamics. But it's also influenced by the quantum field of the sun itself. And what is the sun? And the sun's more than just this kind of fusion reactor that's there. It's operating, to the best of knowledge, like a portal. Because there's so much energy active, it's tearing a hole somewhere else. It's acting as a channel for something. So, in the same way as that, the atom smasher we've got here, the Hadron Collider. The idea is it opens a rip into time-space maybe, or dimensionally, and able to gaze into it. That's the idea. The scientists want to know what's going on inside that, but they can only know by blowing things up. So basically, when we're having earthquakes on Earth, it could be there's asteroids travelling through our orbit, and or between us and the relationship to the sun. And when there's solar flares and stuff, there's drag between the sun and the Earth. In the reverse, if it got cooler, or there's less solar activity, it could be that the actual meteorite or asteroid is going towards the sun. So it's acting as a kind of umbrella, it's shielding us from our normal solar activity. So it's worth noting, so suddenly a drop in temperature or an increase in temperature. So it's interesting that what's piloting the planet. Is it just held by that sun's energy output, or is it able to drive itself at some point? There's an equilibrium, otherwise it was changing. And also if the orbit changes, but the energy output of the sun's changing. It's not necessarily a decay in orbit, and we're going to rip free of the sun. Maybe the sun's output is increasing energy. So it may be very much like elastic, in that if the sun collapsed in on itself, it would suck everything into itself. You just have a giant ball of rock, and then it would blow up and scatter. End up like some scatter shot. It just go into space and get picked up somewhere else and get reformed. And there's also stuff about how black holes operate. So there's lots of work for me to do. So we've had some abnormal weather and some earthquakes. We've got some asteroids that have been moving around. One's been coming close to the Earth, and as it got close to the Earth, we started having more earthquakes over in China, which was interesting. So the connection there is that it's disrupting this quantum field that we sit in. That the planet orbits in. So very much the energy of space is an ocean. An ocean maybe of consciousness, or however it functions, because I think there's space within all matter basically. And it's what people jog around in. It's quite interesting, very interesting. So there's what we might consider dark matter. We haven't really seen the extent of space. We've seen space within our field of the sun, but outside of that, what it becomes like, and also the space that's influenced around the planets, because it correlates to the time. And when you go into the other planets and start orbiting them, it might go under different changes. So, if you went from Earth to Jupiter and started orbiting around Jupiter, you might find that your craft ages quicker, or maybe the time on Earth is gone faster, so you could do an orbit. That could be kind of spooky kind of book. Write a book where basically they take an orbit around the solar system, but when they come back, the human race is no longer there or something, or it's been, it's almost like Planet of the Apes actually. They got something like that. So what's exciting? So when an asteroid comes across there's also a celestial orbit around that runs around the solar system of all these different planets. They run on these disks, and I don't know exactly how that mechanics works, but it's there. So this is a kind of field of attraction. Maybe it's also generated by the resistance of the planet itself in some way. As it spins, it's sort of redirecting the energy. So it's like a hurricane or spinning top. It's generating that field. So things that don't spin will be pulled towards the sun. The things that do spin create a counter field for the energy. And as the sun's energy changes, so does the field. So that's why we might be not pulling away from the orbit of the sun. It may be actually it's just the sun's increased its energy. It's got quite a tight control over the objects in its solar system. So that's how that works. But it's interesting. So an asteroid cutting across from the sun can, or the atomic or the solar weather from the sun to the earth, so you'll get energy spikes. So you might have a heat wave, you might suddenly have a lot of rain, you might have a lot of hurricanes because electromagnetic, it's having some other effects on the planet. But also, if cutting between the earth towards the sun may create a different effect of maybe it would be colder the weather in some way, so it creates a lower or high depending on which direction it's travelling in. Because it's either pulling the energy from the planet or pulling the energy from the sun, or it's absorbing it as it gets disintegrated, or whatever happens when it hits the sun. The sun is a little bit of an unknown thing, and to me, I think it operates as a kind of it's literally a stargate. That's what it is. The amount of energy it produces is creating a tear into some other dimension, so it's acting as a channel for other forces. And when that's removed, then it either causes the solar system to collapse into that portal, or to basically disintegrate its orbit and then travel further out into the universe, into an outer solar system or beyond that. But the importance in my discovery is that if it's like a quantum ocean space, that if something's dropped in there or cuts across it, it can cause ripples, which influence the astral tide, we should call it, or something, which also means that there's properties that can be used, like for instance spacecraft propulsion. We have to call it something like an astral drive or something, and it would be able to use maybe some type of well, it wouldn't be a gamma pulse, but it'd be something. It'd have to use some kind of an energy to cause that ripple effect, but it may be able to redirect. It'd have to have something that spins or something to redirect an energy force to propel, like a propeller of space. So it's literally in this kind of, we're looking at dynamics of an ocean. You just need the right propeller that can turn the ocean, basically, to project yourself forward. And also weapons could be devised from that as well. You could have something they call like a G gun, a gravity gun, and that would be quite a nasty thing to get hit by. And so it's got to deal with the maybe unknown science of maybe sound wave, acoustics, frequency. We often only have the effects of it because it's more of a quantum affecting field thing. So it's field thingy. It has an influence on the matter around it, and based on the cause and effect, we measure the effect. And because we haven't been able to measure the cause very well, we assume it doesn't have much. Much of an impact, like it's a bit like it's just gravity that happens. But if you actually could tap in and control it, Jesus, it's like electricity. It wasn't a thing until we found some way of harnessing it. So it's and it's also could be an interdimensional energy. So if you go beyond a threshold, you may open a rift in space, which is what the sun does, and you've got the potential of A, tapping into a much higher level of energy. It's like where the electricity goes. All the properties of travelling through space, a phenomenal rate, and that just comes on the effect of what an asteroid does as it rotates and spins through the solar system. So rotation seems to be a key factor. I mean, you think of the subtle things of a hurricane, where that, how powerful that is, and yet it can come from such as, it's like the butterfly effect. So I guess the talk really is just kind of exploring the astrophysics, gravity, and sort of seeing this model in my mind. And it means also any earthquakes we get on planet Earth is either something affecting the sun, or some asteroid that's probably coming between or causing. Because normally it's got this synchronicity in it, so it's only affected by something that's generating a sort of counter field. So that means most earthquakes on Earth are generated by probably asteroids, and the solar relationship we've got with the sun. That's it really. Nice to sign off and have a great one.